4.5 years of courtroom warfare, millions spent on legal fees, appeals to the Ninth Circuit, petitions to the Supreme Court, constitutional challenges based on interstate commerce. The California Trucking Association threw everything at Assembly Bill 5, and in August 2024, they surrendered. The statement was direct. The ABC test eliminates owner-operators. 70,000 independent businesses just became illegal. Major carriers are now executing exit strategies. Drivers are refusing California loads. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach handle 10 million containers annually. Every single one needs a truck to leave the dock. What happens when those trucks stop coming? The San Pedro Bay Port Complex operates as North America's biggest entrance point for international trade. Every 12 months, goods valued at over $500 billion flow through these facilities, feeding distribution networks that span the entire nation. Almost one of every 3 shipping containers arriving in America comes through these terminals, creating jobs for 3 million people in storage facilities, retail outlets, and production plants. Even minor slowdowns at this location can create problems that reach across state boundaries. However, in 2025, California's shipping sector encounters a fresh challenge. 3 significant regulations, Assembly Bill 5, Assembly Bill 692, and the Advanced Clean Trucks Rule, launched at the same time, each focusing on a separate aspect of the hauling business. Combined, these measures impact more than 70,000 self-employed haulers, most of whom have created their careers around the freedom of working as contractors. Worker rights supporters describe these changes as long overdue, claiming that years of incorrect worker classification have stripped haulers of proper compensation and fundamental safeguards. Business representatives, meanwhile, cautioned that meeting these requirements will create costs throughout the entire distribution network. Governor Gavin Newsom, facing demands from both union organizations and commercial groups, has stood by the state's strategy as a vital move toward fairness and environmental responsibility. Official documents from Sacramento describe the package of regulations as a method to update the sector while tackling persistent exploitation. Still, with so many operators caught in the middle, the consequences reach well beyond California's borders. Any disturbance to this arrangement, whether from worker reclassification, training agreement prohibitions, or zero-emission requirements, could slow down the flow of products across the country. As initial enforcement begins, focus shifts to how these overlapping regulations will work in practice. On October 30th, 2025, a notice from the California Labor Commissioner arrived like a thunderclap through the state's shipping routes. 3 businesses, Mega Nice Trucking, Ryder Last Mile, and Costco, received a total financial penalty of $868,128 for incorrectly classifying 58 delivery operators in San Diego. Officials discovered that these operators, handled as self-employed contractors, received fixed daily payments with no extra pay for long hours, no health care coverage, and no security if jobs disappeared. The enforcement measure didn't simply impose penalties. It compelled transportation companies and operators to face a changed situation. Workers classified as employees in California earn roughly $35,000 annually, while those working as contractors often take home less, approximately $28,783, based on state employment records. That earnings difference, long at the heart of the Assembly Bill 5 argument, now carried real consequences for both employers and workers. For operators like Dean Martinez, who had dedicated years to moving cargo on his own timetable, the citation wasn't merely news. It meant deciding between moving his household or surrendering the autonomy that originally attracted him to the profession. Landstar, one of the country's biggest carriers, presented 365 California-based operators with a harsh decision: move to another state or secure their own operating permits, a costly and uncertain venture. Some faced no decision whatsoever. California Intermodal Associates, a presence in the drayage field for 25 years, closed permanently, pointing to compliance expenses. Luis Garcia, a veteran operator, characterized the environment as stressful and unclear. Each enforcement measure, each fresh shutdown or moving proposal reduced the state's shipping capability, forcing operators and households to consider their choices in an atmosphere of growing legal and monetary stress. National oversight emerged just as California's hauling workforce absorbed the impact of fresh state requirements. In late 2025, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration initiated a countrywide review focusing on commercial licenses possessed by individuals who aren't citizens. California's Department of Motor Vehicles identified compliance problems affecting 17,299 permits, each representing an operator whose work permission didn't align with the ending date on their commercial license. The state received a clear ultimatum: align licensing with national regulations or face losing a chunk of highway funding, with $40 million immediately under examination for English skill enforcement. For the state's distribution sector, the timing proved disastrous. Immigrant operators comprise roughly 20% of California's hauling workforce, many filling critical positions in port drayage and regional shipping. The review left thousands worried about their careers and whether they could legally drive on California highways. Sector organizations warned that removing so many skilled operators would damage cargo movement at the worst conceivable moment, adding to the disruptions already happening from fresh classification and training regulations. A legal contest quickly emerged in December as advocacy organizations contended that the state's cancellation methods failed to offer proper legal protections for impacted operators. While national authorities emphasized safety and compliance, port managers and carriers prepared for a worker shortage. The danger went beyond individual careers. Every canceled permit threatened the dependability of distribution networks transporting products from the docks to the country's stores. On January 1, 2026, California's Assembly Bill 692 became active, establishing fresh limits on how transportation businesses can handle their workforce. The regulation forbids employers from requiring operators to reimburse training expenses if they depart the position, eliminating a practice that previously bound workers to carriers through financial obligation. For every breach, the fine cites at a minimum of $5,000 per impacted worker. Sector recruiters, long dependent on stay or pay arrangements to keep new employees, now confront the difficulty of bringing in and maintaining operators without the option of monetary penalties. Carriers scramble to create fresh training schemes that follow the regulation, balancing the expense of initial investment against the danger of losing skilled people to rivals. Meanwhile, the monetary burden increases from a different angle. The state's Advanced Clean Trucks regulation, enforced by the California Air Resources Board, speeds up the transition to zero-emission machines. Currently, only 2,820 charging stations exist statewide for medium and heavy commercial trucks. However, state projections require 157,000 chargers by 2030 to enable a complete transformation. The cost for a zero-emission Class 8 truck spans from $400,000 to $600,000, 2 to 3 times the expense of a diesel vehicle. Small operations can request vouchers through the hybrid and zero-emission truck and bus voucher incentive project, with benefits reaching up to $240,000 per truck. Still, even with these credits, the funds needed to update fleets remains overwhelming. As of October 2024, merely 415 zero-emission trucks were registered at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, showing the magnitude of the obstacle ahead. Dr. Maya Patel, an energy specialist, identifies this gap between policy goals and infrastructure facts as a crucial challenge for the sector's future. Container movement at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach hit record heights in 2024. Los Angeles handled 10.3 million 20-foot equivalent units, while Long Beach processed 9.6 million, both among the strongest yearly figures ever documented. These statistics demonstrate a rise in demand and the port's ability to handle enormous amounts of cargo even as regulatory modifications approach. But by May 2025, the situation had changed. Monthly volume at the combined facility fell to 716,619 TEUs, the weakest level in 2 years. Port leaders attributed the instability to changing trade strategies and companies rushing to transport products ahead of fresh tariffs. Despite the decline, the network kept operating, highlighting both the strength and the vulnerability of California's shipping foundation to external shocks. The National Retail Federation's lead economist forecasts a 10 to 17% reduction in California port activity for the first quarter of 2026, referencing the combined impacts of regulatory modifications and shifting trade patterns. Accounts of withdrawn orders and climbing inventory expenses have sparked concerns about potential distribution network obstacles. At a news gathering in Sacramento, Governor Gavin Newsom discussed the mounting worries, declaring, We are on the brink of a logistics disruption that could affect every American household. Coordinated action between state agencies, industry, and labor is not optional. It's essential. Newsom confirmed his government's dedication to a 2035 vision of zero-emission shipping and equitable employment standards, but recognized that the route ahead will require adaptability and quick reaction as circumstances develop. Back in September 2019, Governor Newsom signed Assembly Bill 5 into regulation. Known as the gig worker measure, it aimed to reclassify self-employed contractors as staff members. The legislation employs what's called the ABC examination. To qualify as a self-employed contractor, a worker needs to satisfy all three standards. A, they need to be independent from the supervision and management of the employing business. B, the tasks they complete need to fall outside the typical operations of the employing organization's core activity. C, they need to be regularly involved in a separately created profession or enterprise. The difficulty for haulers lies in the B section. If you're a self-employed hauler transporting cargo for a shipping business, you're completing the identical tasks as that organization's primary operation. You're moving freight for that business. Under Assembly Bill 5, that immediately classifies you as staff, not a self-employed contractor. The California Trucking Association stated it directly. The B section of the ABC examination essentially prevents leased owner-operators from working lawfully in California. Certain occupations received exemptions from Assembly Bill 5. Licensed physicians, lawyers, engineers, and direct salespeople were excluded, but haulers got no exemption. The hauling sector was not provided an exception. These regulations differ from other states with comparable ABC examinations. California's interpretation stands as the most rigid in the nation. Most other states only reject self-employed contractor designation if workers complete their tasks in the identical place. California connected it to the character of the enterprise itself. That choice decimated an entire sector. The hauling sector didn't accept defeat quietly. One day before Assembly Bill 5 was scheduled to begin on January 1, 2020, the California Trucking Association submitted a legal case. A national judge issued a temporary order that blocked the regulation from affecting motor carriers. For 4.5 years, haulers worked under that order while the matter progressed through the legal system. In May 2021, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decided against the hauling sector and overturned the lower tribunal's ruling. They permitted the order to remain active while the matter was taken to the Supreme Court. In June 2022, the Supreme Court refused to review the matter. They returned it to the lower tribunals. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, OOIDA, continued the battle. They contended that Assembly Bill 5 breaches the Constitution's Commerce Clause because it treats drivers from other states unfairly and clashes with national hauling regulations. In May 2024, a California district judge rejected their appeal for a fresh order. The judge determined that Assembly Bill 5 does not violate the fundamental constitutional rule of forbidding intentional bias against interstate business. Then, in August 2024, the California Trucking Association formally abandoned its legal challenge. After 4.5 years of court battles, they surrendered. Their announcement recognized the facts. Assembly Bill 5's ABC examination essentially removes owner-operators as self-employed contractors for motor carriers. They cautioned it might damage California's 70,000 self-employed haulers. The legal possibilities are finished, the sector lost, and now the results are arriving. What occurs when you inform 70,000 self-employed haulers they can no longer work legally in your state? They depart. Landstar, one of the biggest hauling businesses in America with thousands of owner-operators, started advising that operators move out of California completely. If operators wish to continue as self-employed contractors, Landstar instructed them to either relocate to another state or obtain their own authority. Other carriers are implementing comparable measures. Some are examining their lease contracts. Some are transforming self-employed contractors to employee operators, and some are simply instructing haulers to stay away from California cargo entirely. The solution that has developed works like this. Assembly Bill 5 limits self-employed contractors from hauling cargo that starts in California, but it doesn't forbid them from delivering cargo arriving from other states. So haulers are deadheading out of California. They unload their delivery, then travel out without cargo, declining to collect any freight that begins in California. Once they're beyond state lines, they locate fresh cargo using a load platform and continue traveling. That's not a functioning hauling sector, that's a departure. The damage hits California-based carriers hardest. They can't simply move their whole operation immediately. Carriers from other states are progressively deciding to bypass California completely rather than handle the legal confusion. What makes this situation stranger is that California has not actively pursued Assembly Bill 5 against hauling businesses. Up to now, there have been no documented reviews, probes, or legal actions focusing on hauling businesses for breaches under Assembly Bill 5. So the sector is falling apart not because of pursuit, but because of confusion. Businesses can't function under legal confusion. They don't know when trouble will arrive. They don't know if they'll encounter back compensation, tax fines, or legal actions. So they're leaving before they discover the consequences. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach together manage roughly 40% of all shipping containers arriving in the United States. In 2025, despite all the tariff chaos, the Port of Los Angeles handled 10 million container units. That represented their third busiest year ever. Every single one of those containers must leave the dock on a truck. The hauling sector calls them drayage trucks. They're the short-distance trucks that transport containers from the port to storage facilities and distribution points. Under California's advanced clean fleet regulations, drayage trucks encounter some of the toughest requirements. As of January 2024, only zero-emission drayage trucks can be registered in California's monitoring network. California is at the same time pushing haulers out with Assembly Bill 5 and requiring the remaining haulers to purchase electric machines that cost 3 to 4 times more than diesel trucks. The calculations don't add up. There are presently about 70,000 owner-operators driving in California. If even a portion of them depart or stop taking California cargo, capability decreases. When capability decreases, prices increase. When prices increase, the expense of everything that travels on a truck goes up, and in California, that's basically everything. The food in your market arrived on a truck, the fuel at your pump arrived on a truck, the supplies to construct your home arrived on a truck, the deliveries at your entrance arrived on a truck. The typical American family relies on hauling for almost every physical item they use, and California just informed 70,000 of those haulers that their operation method is unlawful. This isn't merely a California difficulty. California's economy stands as the biggest in the United States and the fifth biggest globally. It's an enormous consumption market. When California's hauling capability shrinks, the entire Western distribution network experiences it. Arizona and Nevada are especially vulnerable. These states rely on California for fuel. 33% of Arizona's gasoline and 88% of Nevada's arrives through California pipelines, but they also depend on California's ports for consumer products. Phoenix doesn't have a significant container port, neither does Las Vegas. Products flow through Los Angeles and Long Beach onto trucks and out to the remainder of the Southwest. If haulers are staying away from California cargo, those products either remain longer at the port, generating congestion, or they get redirected through more costly channels. Either way, costs rise for everyone in the area. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, OIDA, contended in tribunal that Assembly Bill 5 treats drivers from other states unfairly. They claimed California-based carriers can balance Assembly Bill 5 compliance expenses more successfully than carriers from other states, providing local operations a competitive edge. The judge disagreed, but the practical facts show that interstate business is being interrupted regardless of the legal decision. A hauler based in Texas must decide, do I take a cargo going to California, knowing I'll have to travel out without freight, or do I accept a different cargo that keeps me away from California completely? Increasingly, they're selecting the second choice. Some hauling businesses have attempted to adjust by transforming self-employed contractors to employee operators, but that means covering payroll taxes, offering health care, and taking on all the expenses that owner-operators previously managed independently. Many carriers can't manage it. The California Trucking Association suggested that if enough political or economic force is applied, the regulation could be changed to include a hauling exemption, but that would need California's legislature to admit they created an error. And based on their history with the refineries, with